Property Tribes on location at the Landlord Investment Show here at Olympia in London, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Iain Duncan Smith. Iain, it's been so brilliant to have your input here today. Thank you so much for coming. Let's talk about the government. Why do you think they are attacking the small private landlord?
Well, I think these changes were made by the previous Chancellor, George Osborne, and I think they were set against the backdrop of two elements, I think. The first was the concern about overseas buyers buying into the market and distorting the value and price, and also at the same time reducing the available properties for people like first-time buyers further down the chain. The second element, I think, was again about first-time buyers, and that there was a growing concern that a lot of the buy-to-let market was occupying the space that, you know, first-time buyers would themselves have found, particularly on the cheaper properties. Now, there is some element of evidence to that extent, but not. I think what then happened is a series of things took place, not just some changes over interest rates, but also, you know, the issues around the prudential authorities, crackdown on risk, which is now becoming quite difficult. So there's a general combination of things which I think are making life very difficult for those in the small groups, 4 or fewer properties. And I think I would hope and have urged the Chancellor to look to see whether there's anything we can do to make their life a little bit simpler or a little bit easier. Certainly not add anything to this problem, but more importantly, just, you know, recognise that many of these people are, you know, the future larger property holders, portfolio holders, and I think the idea that you can somehow separate the small from the larger is the problem, and I think that's the key. So basically we need to do some rectification of what I think was a fairly heavy boot that was put into this market.
Yeah, indeed, and you've had a lot of feedback from landlords here today who
Definitely.
It's so great to see you engaging on almost a one-to-one basis with them, actually. You have reported your concerns to the current Chancellor, haven't you?
I have, and following this I will do him another note to say that there are real concerns about this, and having spoken to a number of them, that, you know, that I think this needs to be thought about rather carefully. But, you know, like all these things, the problem is the constraints on the Chancellor at the moment are enormous, and I think therefore the worst thing would be for further change to take place in this market, and I would hope that some rectification might take place with regards to this marketplace.
Do you think it was fair that it was retrospective, bearing in mind that landlords have, you know, got very long time frames for investing, maybe 15, 20 years? I myself have been involved for 14 years. I've faced this change. Do you think it was fair that it was retrospective?
I have a very simple principle in life. I have never been in favour of retrospective changes. I think they're unfair because people make their plans on the rules and exist at that point. And then suddenly find that actually, while they were doing something which was quite reasonable, they now find that actually, because the government changed its view some years on, that somehow that becomes a problem. I've never been in favour of that. I think it's a very bad practice. The Treasury likes it, which must make it a bad practice.
And just to finish, obviously a lot of uncertainty for landlords, that affects their appetite for investing. Do you think that there's still opportunity for landlords to be involved in the private rented sector?
I do, funnily enough. Some of the landlords are already spotted where they need to be. I think there's going to be fewer in the London area, as far as I read it, but a lot of people are moving into areas where there's a good guaranteed return, but at the same time slightly relatively cheaper prices. University towns are a good example. I noticed there's the beginnings of a move to buy into university towns because they've got student population paying their rent, and all fairly straightforward. And I think there's been a move in that direction. But like all these marketplaces, you know, you need to see how it all develops, and people will find, I guess, the best value in due course. But it's been difficult, and I think it'll be difficult for a while to come.
Do you think the government's going to monitor the effect of Section 24? Because our landlords at Property Tribes are very, very concerned.
I believe they will. I hope that the Treasury does that, and I hope they look very carefully at that. And I know that we do need rental property. We do need reasonably priced rental property, because although we're building more houses and want to build more houses, we still need rental property right now, whether it be social tenants or non-social tenants. There is a demand, it's a growing demand, and I think that needs to be met.
Well, Iain, thank you so much. On behalf of the landlord community, you've really been a supporter of our cause, and we really appreciate you coming along here today, being part of the debate and listening to our concerns and taking them back to Westminster. Can't thank you enough. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well done.